Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I am really excited to bring you a bit of a different type of guest this week, someone that we have not spoken to on the podcast before. So this is something new and exciting, and I hope it's really helpful for both me and all of you listening to hear a little bit more about the story behind the brand. So today I am welcoming Jack Schrupp. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. You'll
Jack
correct
Schrupp.
me, of course, with your introduction. Schrupp. All right. Jack Schrupp, who is the founder of the company Drink Wholesome. And you're going to learn very shortly all about what that is and why it's such a special and unique create. So thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So, of course, we want to start off by hearing, what is Drink Wholesome? I want to hear your origin story, all about yourself and your business. So, let's just lead things off with a little bit more about you so people can get to know you a bit better.
Absolutely. So my name is Jack, and I'm the founder of Drink Wholesome, which, to put it simply, makes protein powders for sensitive stomachs. This business started a few years ago when I was playing two sports as a college athlete and couldn't find a protein powder that didn't upset my stomach. I tried just about every protein powder on the market, every type of protein powder, and was utterly disappointed every time. So I decided to create a protein powder for myself using really, really simple ingredients. I started out going to the local natural health food store and ordering ingredients online in bulk, using a spice grinder in my dormitory to create, which wasn't the best tasting protein powder in the world, but it did solve a big problem for me, which was all the side effects that come with protein powders that are hard to digest: bloating, gas, lethargy, you name it. And so after graduating from college, I became a high school teacher and coach. And one of the beautiful things about being a teacher is that you get the summer off. So that first summer, after having worked as a teacher, I decided to take this protein powder that I was making for myself, by myself, and turn it into a consumer packaged good, because I felt like I could help a lot of other people. And I was fortunate to be able to partner with a local organic granola company in Cape Cod. I was living in Massachusetts at the time, and make the first batch of Drink Wholesome, which again is a protein powder for people with sensitive stomachs. It's made using a short list of really simple ingredients. To give you an idea of what short and simple looks like, my egg white protein powder is made with egg whites, coconut, vanilla, and monk fruit, or maple sugar. I use two different types of sweetener so I can accommodate the greatest number of customers. And compared to other protein powders, that is a very short list of ingredients and very simple. And by simple, I mean minimally processed. Most protein powders, virtually all other protein powders, in fact, are made with protein concentrates and isolates, which are essentially protein sources stripped of everything but the protein, including the fiber, the enzymes, and the other natural digestive aids that help you break them down. Drink Wholesome, on the other hand, is made with whole food protein sources. So I use egg whites in my egg white protein powders. I use almonds in my vegan protein powders, and we just came out with a collagen protein powder. Again, 3 different types of protein powder, multiple types of sweetener, so we can work with the greatest number of people, because every gut is different, every stomach is different. And when it comes to sensitive stomachs, when it comes to working with people with sensitive stomachs, very small amounts of ingredients make a big difference. So that's why there's such a range of options at Drink Wholesome.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, we say it all the time in nutrition and, of course, in sports and everything, right? What works for one person isn't going to necessarily work for somebody else. So, to have different varieties and different options for the whole kind of umbrella of people who do have digestive health concerns, do have especially issues with protein powders. They find that they just don't like them, they don't tolerate them, they get all kinds of, symptoms whenever they use different protein powders. To have different options available that are, just a ingredient list, but still have some variety available. One size doesn't fit all, and you guys are really kind of working to be able to accommodate as many different guts as possible.
Well put.
So tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned kind of a list of the specific ingredients that you've chosen to use in your products. So tell us a little bit more about why you chose the ingredients that you chose, like why egg whites or why almonds or why the monk fruit as a sweetener. So what is it about those ingredients that made them either work well in your experimentation or that you found has worked well for your customer base?
Great question. Well, as I mentioned, I make protein powders using whole food protein sources. And if you want to use, or if you want to take a whole food and turn it into protein powder or a protein supplement, your options are actually pretty limited because most whole foods do not contain enough protein by weight to make for an effective protein supplement. There are only a few whole foods, meaning foods that you can find in nature. You can go out and you can harvest it, you could hunt it, etc. And one of those whole foods is egg whites. Compared to the amount of processing it takes to turn peas into pea protein or whey into whey protein, egg whites require little to no processing. All we do is take our egg whites, once we separate it from the yolk, pasteurize it so it's safe for human consumption, and then spray dry it. So an egg white, a dried egg white, is basically nature's protein powder. And we found that when working with people with really sensitive stomachs, people with chronic digestive diseases, the less processing involved in the production, the better. The more the protein powder looks like food you can find in nature, the easier it is to digest. So the secret to Drink Wholesome is actually really simple. It's the simplicity of our ingredients that distinguishes us from virtually every other protein powder. And we've had an enormous amount of success working with people with gut issues for that reason. So I started out with egg whites, and at some point in time, I felt the need to diversify my product line. Basically, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, there were these avian bird flu outbreaks in the United States that caused the price of eggs to skyrocket 500% virtually overnight. And that, for a business like mine, is catastrophic. I was able to weather that storm. And coming out of it, I decided to build a more resilient business. And that's what spurred me to create my vegan almond-based protein powder. And when it comes to plants, as you might imagine, right, if it's hard to find a whole food animal-based protein source, it's even harder to find a whole food plant-based protein source. Almost all plant-based protein powders are made with protein concentrates or isolates, which are necessarily heavily processed. At the very least, they're mechanically processed, centrifuged to strip away everything but the protein. In many cases, they're actually chemically processed. They're subjected to chemical agents like hexane to strip away the fiber, the carbs, the fats, leaving behind just the protein, which is great if you're trying to boost your protein intake, but not if you have a sensitive stomach. So almonds were the best option when it came to plant-based protein sources. We take almonds, we defat them, meaning we squeeze some of the oil out of them, roast them, mill them, and grind what's left into a really, really fine powder. Compared to most protein sources, that's minimal processing, and it makes a big difference with people with sensitive stomachs. Someone with a normal, healthy gut might not notice the difference, but someone who has had trouble digesting protein supplements in the past is certainly very appreciative. And I'll mention that we don't only work with people with sensitive stomachs. We work with a lot of people who just want a protein powder that's minimally processed. It has no added junk. And we meet both of those criteria. So for people who really want to know what they're putting into their body, really care about what they're putting into their body, Drink Wholesome is a great fit. If you haven't, I encourage you to go look at the ingredients in your average protein powder. It's pretty shocking, and it's a long list of ingredients you probably can't pronounce, and that certainly don't look a whole lot like real food. So if you find yourself dealing with bloating or other digestive issues on a regular basis, especially if you feel that they're caused by the protein supplement you're using, Drink Wholesome might make a big difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then what about the sweeteners that you've chosen? Because you had mentioned using maple syrup as one of your sweetener. And so tell us a little bit more about the process. You had mentioned looking for protein sources that were just as close to nature as possible and had the minimal amount of processing. What was that journey like for you to find good sweetener options that, of course, worked for you in the beginning, and then, as you've gone on, have worked well for your customers?
So we offer sweetened flavored protein powders. We also offer unsweetened, unflavored protein powders. And in our sweetened flavored protein powders, we use either monk fruit or maple sugar as the sweetener. There are really two natural sweeteners that I use when cooking in the foods that I eat, and those are maple syrup and honey. I believe in those sweeteners. I believe that if you're going to use a sweetener, you should be using one of those two. They are the most natural, least refined way to sweeten the foods you eat. Um, Obviously, you should use added sugar in moderation. But I think a little bit of added sugar in a diet is perfectly healthy. So I will stand behind maple sugar and honey. We chose maple sugar because it's effectively granulated maple syrup, because we're from New England, and we source from a farm right up the road. So we like to support local, we like to buy local, and we have opportunity to do so. Um, Most of our protein powders are sweetened with monk fruit, which, for those of you who don't know, is a small melon-like fruit native to Southeast Asia. And it is virtually calorie and sugar-free, but sweet, extremely sweet, due to a chemical compound called omogroside, which affects your taste your sweetness receptors, much in the same way that sugar does, but it has no calories. And so it's become more and more popular as a sugar substitute. People want sweet without the added sugar and the calories, and monk fruit fits the bill. And it's, in my opinion, hands down the best sugar substitute when stacked up against stevia, allulose, artificial sweeteners, obviously, because it requires the least amount of processing to make, the fewest chemicals, actually no chemicals at all in our case. We use a natural water extraction method. And it comes from a fruit. It's not synthesized in a lab. So in an ideal world, I think we would use natural sweeteners like maple sugars and all of our protein powders, but we listen to our customers. Most people don't want added sugar, and so we're not going to go against the will of our customers. We're going to give them what they want, and that is a sweet protein powder, but without lots of added sugar. So monk fruit allows us to do that. And as far as natural sweeteners go, or natural sugar substitutes, I should say, it's hands down the winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And, too, just for people listening, who may be struggling with like irritable bowel syndrome and, are looking for options and things that are available to them that they can tolerate a little bit better. Things that are sweetened actually is lower FODMAP and tends to be less triggering for IBS symptoms compared to a lot of other, added sugars and different types of sweeteners. So it's really interesting that even right down, it's sort of a coincidence on your part, but it's great that it, was something that worked well for you and obviously works well for your customers, but also just for people listening who, are like, well, what kind of added sugar should I use, or what's out there that's really going to be a better fit for me if I am struggling with digestive health symptoms. Maple syrup is actually one that is recommended. And it's funny because I'm in Canada and, we're a huge exporter of maple syrup too. So I just thought it was funny that that was something that was on your ingredient list.
Yeah, we love maple sugar. We love maple syrup. I was going to mention that we use a pure monk fruit. We get a lot of questions about the monk fruit that we use, how it's processed, and if there are any added ingredients. Many monk fruit sweeteners, possibly most monk fruit sweeteners, are cut with a sugar alcohol like erythritol, which is not agreeable for people with sensitive stomachs and is not an ingredient I would recommend adding to your diet if you have other alternatives. So be mindful of the monk fruit that you're using, and you can rest assured that when it comes to Drink Wholesome, we use pure monk fruit with no additives whatsoever. And that is because, again, fewer ingredients, the better for our customers with sensitive stomachs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, definitely the sugar alcohols can be, very triggering for people with symptoms. So you want to be careful and, check those ingredients and just know like what you're eating and just what's in the different food choices that you're making, because sometimes it's something very unexpected or sort of the least expected thing ends up being what's maybe causing GI symptoms. Now, of course, on this podcast, we're working with runners. And so we're talking about runners, and we know that we need to fuel our bodies well. We do need to fuel our bodies with carbs. Taking in added sugars and using sweetened products is a huge part of intra-run fueling, of pre-workout fueling. It's just sort of the nature of needing those additional calories for training. But for runners who struggle with GI issues, which is tremendously common, I mean, 80% of runners at one point in time or another have had digestive issues while running. We really need to be checking those ingredient lists. We really need to know what works for us, what doesn't. If we are having sensitivities, we need to be checking and, finding alternatives that are going to sit a little bit better.
I get asked all the time by customers who are runners if Drink Wholesome would be a good fit for them, sometimes even if they should use protein powder. I'd never recommend that an individual use or not use protein powder. That really comes down to your preferences and your needs. But I will say that we have a lot of runners who have tried Drink Wholesome and loved it. I'm a runner myself. I've done my fair share of long runs and preparations for marathons, and I understand as well as anyone, the indigestion, the symptoms that can come with training. And so Drink Wholesome for most people works. And if you fall into that camp, I recommend that you give it a try. We sell sample packs, so it's pretty low stakes. We ship to Canada. I encourage you to give it a try. It might be exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want to back up a little bit because I just think it's so interesting. Like when I heard your story and when I tried your product and everything like that, I was really fascinated by, how someone who's still basically a college student is to go through the steps of like starting this company, figuring out the manufacturing steps, like sourcing product and like the packaging and like all of the things that go into like creating and selling something like this. So I want to hear a little bit more about like that process. How long did it take you? What were some of the, barriers or some of the obstacles that you had to overcome to launch a product like this out into the world as someone, so young and with not like a lot of experience in manufacturing?
That's a great question. If I were to start another food or beverage brand today, it would take far less time and cost far less and leave me with far fewer headaches. Um, because this process is really, it's iterative. Very few people get it right the first time. You shouldn't ever expect to get it right the first time. So I have made about every mistake you can make. I encounter a significant setback every week. I think entrepreneurship, especially in the food and beverage space, is all about getting back on your feet and dusting yourself off, taking a different approach, thinking creatively, thinking on your feet. So I, as you noted, had no experience. I was a French teacher and a ski coach. My day job had nothing to do with the business that I was trying to build after hours over the summer on the weekend. And for that reason, it was a bit of a painstaking process. But I was young and enthusiastic and generally believed in what I was doing. So I took all of those setbacks in stride. Um, as I mentioned, I was fortunate to partner with a local company that had the equipment required to make my product. I did a good job networking, learning from other people in the industry, and that was, I think, hugely instrumental to building my business, learning from others, taking advice from others, and then applying it to my own business. It's hard, and I'd recommend to anyone who's getting into it to start small and not to expect to get it right the first time. You will make mistakes, and you will have to learn from them and have to apply those learnings every day. I could go through the laundry list of mistakes I've made. They include like spelling protein wrong on thousands of bags of protein powder. Um,
Oh
like it's the kind of thing that
no.
should never happen, but it does. Um,
Yeah.
and
Oh, 100%.
yeah, and
100%.
you just have to smile, grit your teeth, and move on. I think recently
Yeah.
we had to shut down production for a month and a half, which for a small business like mine could be devastating. It was extremely stressful. It blindsided us. But the day it happened, the day we had to shut down, I thought that was kind of the end of the business. But here we are 6 weeks later. We're back in production. Things are looking better than ever. So it's a roller coaster. And I make
Yes.
mistakes. Misfortune comes my way. In either case, I just have to be persistent.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think, I mean, as a fellow business owner, I mean, we are in totally different sort of fields here with what we do. I mean, I talk about nutrition with people, you provide the nutrition to people. But I think those are really great lessons and being resilient, and just if you believe in what you're doing and you believe in your product and you know that it's out there in the world and making people's lives better, then you just keep going with it. And I think that's a really, inspirational part of your story. So thank you for sharing that. So, as you mentioned, of course, like everyone and anyone can enjoy your product. Like there's no one that this product like wouldn't work for. You don't have something that can be accommodating, whether someone does eat animal foods or wants a plant-based protein powder, you've kind of got all different range of products available these days. But speaking from kind of your personal experience, your negative experiences with using protein powders when you were younger, and looking at the specific people who would be really good ideal candidates for trying this product. Like if someone's listening to this episode and they're wondering like, oh, I wonder if this is something that I should try. Who is sort of your ideal customer, or what kind of issues or challenges would that person be having that you would say, oh, you know what, you definitely want to be trying our protein powder?
So our core customer is someone with a sensitive stomach. That's a pretty broad term. It encompasses people
Yes.
with chronic digestive issues or digestive disease. So, for example, we have a lot of customers with irritable bowel syndrome. And for that reason, we've been getting our products low FODMAP certified, and that way our customers with IBS can trust that they're getting a product that meets their specific dietary needs. That said, we have had customers with IBS using our products long before they were low FODMAP certified. I think most people with IBS understand that. But the low FODMAP diet is one tool that can be used to help reduce symptoms, help manage the diet. Anyway, so people with IBS, people with IBD, people with pretty severe conditions that cause malnutrition and weight loss use Drink Wholesome. Now, that makes it sound like a brand, like a medical brand, but that's not at all the case. But that is to show that we serve that type of customer. If you have serious dietary restrictions, if you have a serious condition, Drink Wholesome is made for you. And then we have a whole lot of people, like I mentioned, who just want short and simple. They want a protein supplement, meaning they want a product that's convenient and easy to use and allows them to fill in nutritional gaps. That's not going to upset their stomach. That's not going to require them to fill their body with junk that they wouldn't otherwise be eating. I don't think that anyone needs a protein powder, but the longer I work in this industry, the more I understand how helpful a protein powder can be for a runner,
Yep.
for an athlete. It is a great way to add protein to your diet while you're training during those intensity periods. You could drink a protein shake right after a run if you want a convenient source of nutrients and protein, or you could sneak a little protein to your recipes. I fall into that category. That's why I like to use protein powders. I'll add some, I'll add to my smoothies. I'll add to my pancake recipes. Our protein powders, they work great for cooking and baking. I can add 20 grams of whole food protein to a food that would otherwise be low in protein, thereby increasing my protein intake, balancing out the meal so it's more filling, it's a more sustained source of energy throughout the day. And I think my personal needs, my personal preferences have really like informed what the brand has become. And I am a person with a sensitive stomach who's very active and uses protein supplements as part of a, I wouldn't say I'm training all the time, but who used to use protein supplements to support training. I know you work with runners. I know that runners like carbohydrates have been king for the longest time in that discipline, but I hear more and more from runners about runners looking to add more protein to their diets because we're now understanding the importance of protein in recovery, the importance of protein in improving performance, generally speaking. I mean, it doesn't matter how hard you train. If you are protein deficient, you're not going to get faster. You're only going to get slower in the long term. So it's very important. And for people with busy lifestyles, um, for people who have dietary restrictions, maybe whether that be they're vegetarian, they're vegan, or they have got issues that prevent them from eating certain foods, a protein can be a huge tool or a hugely important tool. So that was a long-winded answer to say we focus on people with gut issues, but a lot of our customers are people who just look at the bag. I will mention that we put the ingredients right on the front of the bag, smack you over the head with the simplicity of the product.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is what you get. So people look at it and intuitively they understand, wow, this is a great alternative to other products that are out there. I understand why this would be good for me, and they choose it for that reason. We're dairy free. So if you're lactose intolerant, if you have a dairy allergy, check. We have a vegan option. We do use nuts. We do use eggs. So you should be mindful if you have allergies to those foods. But given the range of products that we offer, there should be something for almost everything.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think too, just mentioning runners and kind of this new appreciation or sort of, thought that's going into needing protein for runners and just endurance athletes in general, especially with now ultra running taking off to the degree that it is and people putting in, these tremendous volumes of training and then also doing these very long races, multi-day races, things like that, to have a easily digestible protein option that you can even incorporate into your intra-run fueling strategy and, quick recovery, quick turn between training sessions or between legs of a race. I think there's so much value in having more options in that regard.
And the first thing I thought of was like homemade protein balls or protein bars. If I'm doing anything endurance, I try to stay away from goo. I know that is like Kleenex, that refers to a lot of products generally.
Yeah.
Because they just upset my stomach. I mean, one goo might fly, but multiple goos over multiple hours is a disaster for someone like me. I tend to process solid food, although it might not be the most palatable during a hard effort. And so I've taken to making protein balls, which are like these little bites. I often add oats, a natural sweetener like maple syrup. I will blend up dates and I'll mix in protein powder and nut butter for healthy fats. So you get this nutritionally balanced fuel, which looks from a nutritional standpoint very different than your shot block, your goo, your energy gel, which is like a easily absorbed, easily digested source of simple carbs. Maybe there's some added caffeine, which definitely serves its purpose. But for someone like me, a nutritionally balanced, higher protein option works. It's not said that it will work for you, and if you love your energy gels, stick with them. But if you're dissatisfied, like I have been with those types of products, I recommend that you, experiment with something higher in protein with a little bit of healthy fats. It tends to digest a little bit more slowly, which it might sound counterintuitive, but everybody's different, and if it works for you, I wouldn't think too hard about it. I would just trust the whole food.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned a few different ways that you like to use protein powders, but out of all of the products in your library there, all the different options, what is your personal favorite product that you sell?
The first two flavors I ever made were mocha and peanut butter coconut, which is hilarious because everybody knows that chocolate and vanilla are the best seller for every company. And now over 70% of my sales are for those two flavors of protein. So it was very foolish from a business perspective to launch with anything other than chocolate and vanilla. But I wasn't thinking that way. I was just sharing my favorite flavors with the world. And so my favorite flavor is my mocha flavor, which has a little bit of espresso bean in it and cacao. It's an egg white based protein powder. It's super simple. I just love the flavor, and I like adding it to my morning routine. Mocha in the morning makes sense for me, and I will use that in many different ways. That's why protein powder is pretty versatile. I love adding it to oatmeal, for example. It's just a great way to start my day. I know I'm getting my protein in, and I just really like how it tastes. I'm one of those people who likes protein powder. Actually, that's not true. I like my protein powder. And some people, they choke down a protein shake every day because they feel like they need the extra protein. But for them, it's like a chore. I don't think eating anything should be a chore. So if your protein powder is a chore, you should probably find another brand. Not to say that Drink Wholesome is that brand, but for me, it certainly is. And again, this is a product that I built or created for myself and then decided to share with the world. So it's very much in line with my tastes, which aren't necessarily your tastes. But what I'm trying to say is mocha protein powder is my favorite, and I generally enjoy having it in my diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that you say that because when people ask me, and of course, a question I get asked constantly is like, do I need a protein powder? And if so, which protein powder should I get? And to me, the answer is always find one that you like. I mean, like find one that you like the taste of enough that you want to eat it all the time. Because if you don't enjoy eating it, if you don't like the flavor, if I make a recommendation, buy this or buy that, or, you need to have this product or that product, and you hate it, or it doesn't sit well, or whatever the case, then unfortunately, like it's just going to be a total bust. And I can speak, from experience as well. Like I am not a protein powder girly. The last protein powder, the last one that I had, I think it expired sitting in my cupboard because I'm not the person who can choke down a protein shake every single day just to choke it down. So if I'm going to use protein powder in my diet, it has to be something that I like look forward to using and like enough that I really want it. Otherwise, it just sits there.
And we have rolled out a lot of different flavors to make supplementing ones or our customers' protein intake fun and delicious. We actually haven't made the official announcement, but last week we launched a strawberry flavor and a coffee flavor. Those
Oh,
aren't, although I do like mocha, those aren't by no means my favorite flavors. That's not what I would gravitate towards when it comes to protein powder or ice cream or anything else. But that's what our customers asked for. So we offer a wide range of flavors, including unflavored options for people who just like sneaking protein powder into soups, sauces, savory dishes. And I think that's hugely important because food you eat has to taste good. If it doesn't taste good, it's not going to be part of a long-term sustainable diet. And if it's not part of your long-term sustainable diet, what's the point? Health is not a
yeah.
6-week affair. A diet is not a 6-week affair. It's what you eat for life. I think we have a very twisted relationship with nutrition when it comes to dieting. Sometimes people think it's a short-term fix, which is that never works. You might achieve your goals in the short term, but if you want to be healthy in the long term and happy with the food you eat and have a good relationship with the food you eat, it has to taste good. Unless you're one of those people who I have a friend who can't smell, and so he doesn't care what he eats. That's like he's on the fringe. Most people need
Yeah.
to eat food that tastes good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, like research really supports that too. Like we know that the number one thing that influences whether or not someone's going to eat a food or influences our eating behaviors is taste. That's the number one driver. I mean, which is, kind of both a good and a bad thing in terms of some of the food choices that we make throughout the day. But if your protein powder tastes good and it means you're going to include it, then I think that's fantastic because a lot of runners who have higher protein needs than the general population, and especially a lot of plant-based athletes who need to consume a significant quantity of food. Like, just like you mentioned, it's hard to find those really concentrated source of protein in nature. And for people who are more on the whole food plant-based end of the spectrum with their eating patterns, it can be really challenging to meet a high protein requirement just from these whole food sources. The volume, the amount of food you need to eat is tremendous, which can be a struggle. So to have like a convenient, tasty, easy protein in is something that, a lot of plant-based runners would definitely benefit from. So that brings us to the last thing that I want to hear about, and I'm sure our listeners want to hear about, is where can people learn more about your products, try them out? You mentioned you have sample packs available, which is awesome. And of course, connect with your company.
Sure. So we are at Drink Wholesome on all social media platforms. And our website is www.drinkwholesome.com. From that website, you can order sample packs. We ship to the US, to Canada, to the UK, and Australia. We offer samples because we work with people with sensitive stomachs and we want to give them an opportunity to try the product before they commit to a full-size bag. That's very important to people with sensitive stomachs. And that's a courtesy that a lot of brands don't offer. So if you are on the fence and you want to try it before you commit to something more expensive, we've got you. We also sell on Amazon.com, but those orders only ship to the United States. So if you're in Canada and you want to try Drink Wholesome, go to our website, Drink Wholesome, connect with us on social media. And for those of you placing a first-time order, feel free to use coupon REALFOODS for 10% off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing it with our listeners. I'm sure that lots of people will want to take advantage and try out all the different flavors that you have available and hopefully find a new favorite protein powder. I really want to thank you for taking the time to come and chat with us today and share your story, share more about your company, your products, your ingredients, and, just chat all things protein today. Are there any final thoughts or, tips or advice or anything that you want to leave us with today before we sign off?
Words of wisdom. If you've had trouble digesting protein supplements in the past, you're not alone. I can empathize. I've been in your shoes, and I created a product to solve a problem that I had. So if my story is at all reminiscent of something you've lived, check it out. And if it's not for you, tell your friends. We really appreciate it. We're a small business. I run it with my sister. We produce locally. We source locally. So your support, word of mouth, means a lot to us. Thank you.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much once again for joining me today. And I hope that everyone listening enjoyed this episode to get to know Jack, the founder of Drink Wholesome. Head on over to their website. He mentioned www.drinkwholesome.com. Check out their products and don't forget to use that promo code. What was that again? One more time?
Real
the promo code?
Foods.
All right, Real Foods to save 10% off your order. All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will catch you back here next week. Bye for now.
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.